All righty, folks, we need to have an unfortunate discussion as we enter Q2 earnings seasons, and we have to do this with Taylor from Life Goal Investments. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. This is an exciting one. This is always the big banks are always what are in the onset of earnings season, and it tells us so much about what's to come a lot of times.
Yeah, so JP Morgan kicks us off on Friday with earnings. I think the real pain comes from the regional and community banks. I'm trying to remind my audience about what happened last March, right? Everybody here knows Silicon Valley Bank, but what they may not remember is the 2-year note hit 5%. Their CEO realized that their balance sheet was trash. Their CEO said, we're going to go raise some money. And that poorly communicated email is what caused a bank run in 48 hours, and then they were gone. Why is that a problem now? Well, we hit 5% on Thursday. It's earnings season. We're going to have banks probably look insolvent if they were forced to reevaluate their hold to maturity portfolio. And we're going to see perhaps a lot of forced merges coming. I think the earnings are going to suck because cash is leaving the banking system for money market funds and treasuries and crypto. And I think we really could have banking crisis 2.0. And there could be some forced mergers, that happen on Saturday and Sunday happening just out of nowhere soon. What do you think?
I tend to agree with you. It's funny. Banking deposits used to be seen as a sticky asset. It is no longer a sticky asset. We saw the run on Silicon Valley Bank happen immediately, right? And so you have a lot of regional banks now that have seen a 10 to 20% decline in their deposit base, and you haven't seen that big consolidation start to take place yet. So I read a great Barron's article over the weekend, and it talked about if you have a 10 to 20% reduction in your deposit base, you have to have some sort of a merger or acquisition take place. And especially if this is more widespread, and a lot of regional banks have seen it. And I think it probably is. And through this earnings season, you're going to start to get an idea of where the rubber meets the road, what these banks are going to do. And I think that, to your point, earnings seasons are when they have to divulge their cards, and that's coming up.
Yeah. And again, one thing I want to make sure, I mean, the Fed just did their, crazy stress test on the big banks. What a complete waste of time, waste of money. This is not about the big 6 or the big 20. It's about, number 2000 and below.
Yep.
Yeah, the big 6 are fine. They're more than fine. But man, there's a lot of pain coming in. Again, it's what's really coming up in this banking crisis is they don't even have to have losses. They don't have to have foreclosures. They have a set of treasuries, CMBS on their books that were bought with stupid low interest rates that are now worth 30% less.
Correct.
Those assets are worth 30% less when compared to their liabilities. It's just broken. So it's really wild that a 10% drop in deposits forces an acquisition. And I don't think anybody's looking.
Well, that's exactly right. Because you think about it, if you only sit with 5 to 7 to 10% assets that are kept liquid on your books, and all of a sudden you bleed through that liquidity and you're at 15%, and now you have to start to force sell these bonds into the market when they're underwater relative to where you bought them at. And these were deemed money good assets, and they're not money good because you said such a meaningful uptick in interest rates. And the Fed is kind of saying, like, I don't care. We're going to continue to take rates higher. Like, this is what we're going to continue to do, and you have to deal with it.
Yeah. And this is why I think if they raise in July, it's the thing that breaks. And again, my hope is, again, CPI comes in super light. We're talking a 2 handle on headline and a 4 handle on core. I hope that some banks highlight their challenges, and the Fed goes, we need to take another month off. They're off in August because of Jackson Hole. And then by the time we get to September, it'll be clear the economy's different and nothing is coming. This July one could be the thing that just blows stuff up.
The problem is there is no incentive for the bank to be forthright as to how much they're struggling, right? So, like, what's the upside to them doing that? Well, yeah, but to the point you've made a lot of times in the past, like, you can't hide things a little bit within quarterly earnings.
Yeah,
no, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. The quarterly earnings are likely not to look pretty, but for them to try to, I guess they're not going to try to make them look bad, is at least my take on things here. They're going to try to make it look as rosy as they possibly can. And we'll
but
see.
Here's the problem. So you're absolutely right. I was one of those accountants. I could massage numbers with totally legal assumptions and make numbers look okay for a quarter or two.
Yep.
But there's always a price to be paid.
Yep.
But with banking, dude, there are some numbers, there are no assumptions. How much cash do you have on the books? That's a number. Yep. There's no assumptions allowed. What is your loan loss reserves? No assumptions allowed. Yep. Right? There's some things in banks that you can't modify or adjust with opinions. And I think that deposit number is going to be scary.
I'm interested to see the deposit numbers even on the big banks, because it's interesting. There's like this dichotomy playing out where they are seen as being the safe harbors, right? The area where you can, definitely deposit money over the $250,000 threshold.
Money good,
yeah. Know the government's going to back it. But at the same time, they're totally taking advantage of that situation when they're paying literally zero on savings deposits. And these other regional banks, or online banks, whichever you want to look at, are paying 4+%. So I'm interested to see, like, where does that pain point start to play out? Because my assumption is you're likely going to see deposits have ticked up for these big banks over the last quarter. I don't know that. I don't have any crystal ball, but I think that safety is more important than the yield hunting is on the other side. And I think you're going to see regional banks continue to bleed at the hands of these big banks. Overall, it does seem that the trend is out of banks. And you look at just the banking sector as a whole, it's definitely out.
Yeah. And again, something we've talked about on this channel for at least 6 months. Please go back and study the savings and loan crisis. This is the last time. This was in the early 80s, where basically capital flight from banks, right? Essentially what happened at savings and loans is there was an artificial cap on interest rates. When rates were sent higher, left the savings and loans, and all the hell broke loose. That's essentially what's happening today under a different ilk. This is going to be a problem. I really expect this earnings season to be no bueno for banks, including the big banks. I think net interest margin isn't going to be what they thought. They're going to have larger loan loss reserves. But I guess we start to find out Friday.
Well, the net interest margin, think about this, is in my opinion going to be decent at the big banks because they're not paying anything, right? They're literally not paying anything. JP Morgan Chase is paying 0.01% still to this day.
0.01.
They're paying zero, a goose egg. But the regional banks, to your point, when rates go up, that interest margin is supposed to widen, but they're fighting tooth and nail for competition to bring in those assets and hold deposits. That I'm with you. I think that the regional banks and these online banks are going to have net interest margins be not nearly as pretty as they thought they would be if they had known Fed funds were at 5%.
Yeah, and my hope, again, given the Fed meeting is late July, is we get a couple of these regional banks where the Fed looks at this going, they have, people argue that they have a tri-mandate, right? Stable prices, full employment, and save the financial system.
Yep.
My hope is that third one sticks around. Because again, I think it'll be they can hold for 18 months if they do nothing. If they raise one time, they cut in 9 months. That's the decision in front of them.
It's interesting right now because they have two things going on simultaneously. They have backdoor quantitative easing with the backup of the banking system, and they're raising rates on the other side. So it's like they're fighting against each other. They're saying, hey, we'll raise rates on this side, but we'll bail anybody out on the other side and inject liquidity back into the system. I don't know if it makes a ton of sense.
No, it's going to be interesting. And again, the smart money, 95% last time I checked, say a rate increase is coming. And again, I think, Taylor, that's where you are as well. You think do you think they're going to bump it in July?
I am, because I have learned not to refute what the Fed says. They've done exactly.
Don't fight the Fed, Michael. Give in. Don't fight the Fed.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm going to fight till the end because I already put it out there and I don't want to change. Taylor, where can people find you?
Yep, we're on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at Life Goal Investments.
And Threads. I like
it. Threads, the newbie.
There you go.